Speech. I would like to invite everyone that has prepared for this to please come up on the stage and take their places. This is a speech that Dr. King had made that changed basically the world.
By Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. This speech was delivered on the steps at the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C. on August 28, 1963. 50 years ago, a great American, on whose symbolic shadow we stand, signed the Emancipation Proclamation. This momentous decree came as a great beacon light of hope to millions of Negro slaves who had been seared in the flames of withering injustice. It came as a joyous daybreak to end the long night of captivity. But 100 years later, we must face the tragic fact that the Negro is still not free.
The life of a Negro is still sadly crippled by the manacles of segregation and the chains of discrimination. 100 years later, the Negro still lives on a lonely island of poverty in the midst of a vast ocean of material prosperity. 100 years later, the Negro is still languishing in the corners of American society and finds himself in exile in his own land.
So we have come here today to dramatize an appalling condition. In a sense, we have come to our nation's capital to cash a check. When the architects of our republic wrote the magnificent words of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, they were signing a promissory note to which every American was to fall heir.
This note is a promise that all men be guaranteed the inalienable right of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It is obvious today that America has defaulted on this promissory note insofar as her citizens of color are concerned. Instead of honoring this sacred obligation, America has given the Negro people a bad check, which has come back marked insufficient funds. But we refuse to believe that the Bank of Justice is bankrupt. We refuse to believe that there are insufficient funds in the great vaults of opportunity of this nation.
So we have come to cash this check, a check that will give us upon demand the riches of freedom and the security of justice. We have also come to this hard spot to remind America of the fierce urgency of now. This is no time to engage in the luxury of cooling off or to take the tranquilizing drug of baptism. Now is time to rise from the dark and desolate valley of segregation to the sunlit path of racial injustice. Now is time to open the doors of opportunity to all God's children. Now it's time to lift our nations from the quicksand of racial injustice to the solid rock of brotherhood.
It would be fatal for the nation to overlook the urgency of the moment and to underestimate the determination of the Negro. This sweltering summer of the Negro's legitimate discontent would not pass until there's an invigorating autumn of freedom and equality. 1963 is not an end, but a beginning. Those who hope that the Negro needs to blow off steam and will now be content with the rude awakening if the nation returns to business as usual. There will be neither rest or tranquility until America, the Negro, is granted his citizenship.
The whirlwinds of revolt will continue to shake the foundations of our nation until the bright day of justice emerges. But there is something that I must say to my people who stand on the warm threshold which leads into the palace of justice. Let us not be guilty of wrongful deeds. And let us not seek to satisfy our thirst for freedom by drinking from the cup of bitterness and hatred.
We must forever conduct our struggle on the high plane of dignity and discipline. We must not allow our creative protest to degenerate into physical violence. Again and again, we must rise to majestic heights of meeting physical force with soul force.
The marvelous new militancy, which has engulfed in the Negro community, must not lead us to distrust all of white people. For many of our white brothers, as evidenced by their presence here today, have come to realize that their destiny is tied up with our destiny, and their freedom is inextricably bound to our freedom.
We cannot walk alone, and as we walk, we must make a pledge that we shall march ahead. We cannot turn back. There are those who are asking the devotees of the civil rights, when will you be satisfied? We can never be satisfied as long as our bodies, heavy with fatigue of travel, cannot gain lounging in the motels of highways and the hotels of cities. We cannot be satisfied as long as a Negro's basic mobility is from a smaller ghetto to a larger one. We can never be satisfied as long as a Negro in Mississippi cannot vote, and a Negro in New York believes he has nothing for which to vote. No, we are not satisfied, and we will not be satisfied until justice flows down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream.
I am now mindful that some of you have come here out of great trials and tribulations. Some of you have come fresh from narrow cells. Some of you come from areas where your quest for freedom left you battered by the storms of persecution and staggered by the winds of police brutality. You have been the veterans of creative suffering. Continue to work with the faith that unearned suffering is redemptive.